Hi, and welcome to Watch It Played. My name is Rodney Smith, and in this video, we're going to learn the 1 to 4 player game, Santorini, Riddle of the Sphinx, designed by James Van Niekerk and Paul Saxberg, and published by Roxley Games, who helped sponsor this video. An evil sphinx has come to conquer your peaceful island, but don't worry, as terrifying as she may be, she loves riddles. And if you can solve hers, you'll save your island and be heralded as a hero. Riddle of the Sphinx is an expansion to the original Santorini, and you'll need this game and some of its components, but you do not need to have played Santorini to get right into Riddle of the Sphinx. So join me at the table and let's learn how to play. Before your first game, open this book of riddles and read the opening story to learn about the quest you're beginning. And then turn the page to this tutorial riddle labeled Sunshine and Seashores. Each game you play takes place on one of these 2-page spreads. The first one walks you through the game, explaining the rules as you go. And turning this page brings us to the first official riddle. The riddle's number is listed under its title, which for this riddle is found in the top left-hand corner. This riddle also teaches more of the rules as you play it, and since I'm going to explain all the rules, we'll skip right to riddle number 2, Seaport City. This will help me explain several advanced ideas, but when you play, complete the earlier riddles first. This video will simply let you skip the rules and just jump right in and start playing. To set up, collect these pieces from the Santorini base game, known as the workers. Also collect all of these tower and dome pieces. You might choose to put them on the table somewhere, or keep them in the box as I'm going to do in this video. Anytime in this video that I refer to taking pieces from the box or returning them to the box, I'm referring to whatever area you kept these pieces stored in while playing. The tower pieces are made up of 3 different levels that stack on top of each other. Level 1 goes on the bottom, then level 2 and level 3. Which sides these face doesn't matter, and a tower is considered fully built when it has one of these domes on top. We've now collected the only pieces we're going to need from the Santorini base set, so I'll put the rest of its pieces away. Everything else we'll need will come from the Santorini Riddle of the Sphinx box. The book of riddles should be put in the center of the play area, and as mentioned, we're going to use the Seaport City pages, which I've already opened to. Above this, you'll put the 2 pieces that make up the Sphinx board, directing your attention to this area. Here, you'll put the matching tokens that fit these spaces. Nearby, also create a supply of these silver and gold coins. These are all double-sided, and there are 2 types of each color. This is known as the silver 1 and 2 coin because it shows 1 or 2 tower levels, and this is the silver 3 and 4 coin because of the levels it shows. The gold coins are divided up the same way. This area of the riddle is known as the map and is divided into various square spaces. If a space shows a coin, put that type of token into that space. So we'd add these indicated silver tokens like this. On this side of the map, we have gold coin icons, so we would put those matching coins with the related sides face up into those spaces. Some spaces may show a certain number of tower pieces, and if so, put those related tower sections in them. In this case, we have 2 full towers. Some maps may have spaces that show a combination of tower pieces and tokens. If so, put the token on the highest tower piece in that space. If your map has spaces showing these blessing icons, put one of these blessing tokens into each one of them. The riddle you are playing may have setup instructions like we see here. In this case, we're told to put a certain combination of workers onto the map based on our number of players. In this video, we'll assume we have 2 players, which means one controls the white workers and the other controls the blue ones. Any others you have can be returned to the box. We'll come back and explain the way you set up for other player counts later, but now give each person one of these player aids. Players now decide which of the spaces with these worker icons they want to put their pieces into. Only one can go into each space, so maybe we'd put them like this. Next, we're told to create the starting stockpile based on our chosen difficulty. We'll choose normal, but explain the expert difficulty level later. Here it shows 2 level 1 tower pieces. We take these from the box and put them below our map here. Anytime the game refers to pieces in the stockpile, it means the ones in this area. And if it refers to pieces in the box, it means any here. This distinction is very important when playing. This is the stockpile, and this is the box. Now find the cards with these 3 different types of backs, known as the base gods, green friendly gods, and blessings. In this riddle, the green friendly gods will not be used, so we can return them to the box, but we'll learn about them later. I should also point out the game comes with a mystery pack of cards, but do not open this until you're instructed to. Going through the blessings by their faces, you'll find a number in this area. Collect only the ones numbered 1 through 8 and return the rest to the box. From the ones that remain, shuffle and put them face down onto the Sphinx board here. Then shuffle the base gods, dealing 5 random ones face down here, returning the rest unseen back to the box. From these, then deal 1 face up into each of what are known as the Q slots. The steps we just followed for setting up the God and Blessing decks were found here in this Riddles setup area. Finally, as we're told here, determine a start player by rolling this die and seeing who gets the higher amount, re-rolling ties. Afterwards, keep this die nearby for use later. And that's the setup. In Santorini, Riddle of the Sphinx, you and the other players will be working together to accomplish the goals of the riddle you're currently attempting. These goals, or objectives, are shown near your riddle's map and can come in up to 4 different types: silver, gold, heroic, and godlike. Let's learn about silver first. Silver objectives are represented by silver tokens, which show a certain tower height on them. As we'll see, you'll be able to build towers on the map, and if that space has a token, it moves to the top after. Once the height of a tower matches the height shown on its token, you've completed its requirements, and you move the token here. Filling all of these spaces with silver tokens completes the silver objective. Gold tokens work the same way, and filling these spaces by completing the gold token requirements completes the gold objective. The heroic and godlike objectives will have their own unique requirements. To accomplish a godlike objective, you need to set the riddle up on expert difficulty, as well as fulfill its other requirements. Remember, setting up for the expert difficulty was shown here in the riddle's unique setup instructions. And instead of putting 2 level 1 pieces in your stockpile, you would start with only 1. Since we set up for normal difficulty, that means we cannot complete the godlike objective. At least one objective will indicate that when completed, the riddle ends. Even if you do not have the other objectives completed, if you finish this gold objective first, the riddle just ends. You only need to attempt a riddle once before moving on to a new one, but the more objectives you complete from each riddle, the more abilities you'll unlock for future riddles, as we'll see. So that means you might want to try a riddle more than once or revisit it later to complete as many of its objectives as possible. One of the main challenges with completing a riddle is that you'll find yourself restricted by what pieces you can build with. Yes, there are loads in the box, but you can only build with pieces that are in your stockpile or that are provided by the gods. So you cannot afford to waste the pieces that you managed to collect. You'll want to make sure you're using them wisely as you work towards each goal. The game is played over a series of turns, beginning with the start player and going clockwise around and around the table. And on your turn, you'll perform one of 3 possible actions. So let's learn one of the options, known as selecting a god. To do this, pick any one god from the queue and put it in front of yourself. Each god has a name and a symbol in the area here that represents whether it's a specialist, builder, or mover god. These indicate the type of power a god has in the area here, and a god will also have a quest at its very bottom. We'll learn about powers and quests later, but for now, pay attention to the symbol in this area. When you collect a god, this symbol indicates the type of piece you now collect from the box. Here, we see a dome. This is the symbol for a level 2 piece, and this god shows a symbol that lets you collect any one level of your choosing or a dome. Place your chosen god in front of you and put the piece it provided on top of it. Let's assume we decided to use this symbol to gain a level 2 piece. Remember, you collect this tower piece from the box and then put it on the god. After collecting a god and gaining its related piece, you then draw a new card from the top of the deck to fill the space that was empty. Unless the deck runs out, in which case the spaces are not refilled. During the game, each player can have up to 2 gods at a time, and once a player has 2 gods, they cannot take the select a god action. When you're at your maximum capacity for gods, you can use and remove your gods, allowing you to use this action to collect new gods once again, and we'll learn how that works a little bit later. But for now, let's learn about another action you might instead take on your turn: move, then build. You perform this action with either of your 2 workers. As the blue player, I'll pick this one. Now I must move it to a neighboring adjacent space that does not already have a worker in it. During this video, I'm going to remove and add pieces to the map like you might see later in the game, or perhaps never at all on this particular map, but I'm doing that just so I can create the examples I need in order to explain the rules. So let's go back and I'll do that now. So again, when moving, you go from the space you're in to any adjacent space. And it's okay if there's a token there. You can even move diagonally, but you cannot move into a space with a worker, yours or another player's. There's no space here, so we also could not move in this direction. If a space has tower pieces in it, you can move into that space as long as it's only 1 level higher than your current position. So from here, I can move into this space, but I could not have moved from here up to this space. Now let's pretend I was already here when I started a move. I could move 1 level higher to here, and then on a future turn, I could move 1 level higher to this adjacent space. However, you can never move onto a tower with a dome, so now I could not move here. That said, when moving, you can go down any number of levels, so from here, I could move to here. Some maps have arrows that represent bridges. These are not spaces, but when moving, treat the spaces on either side of a bridge as adjacent. So a moving worker could go from here to here. Either way, after making a move with this action, you must then build with the same worker. When building, you can use any single piece from the stockpile or from any god in front of any player, but you cannot build using a piece from the box. Let's assume I want to build with this piece. I place it in a valid space adjacent to the worker I just moved with this action. Let's assume I just moved this one here. This is a level 1 piece, so it must go on the bottom level. You cannot build in a space with a worker, so I could not put it here. But the space can have a token. If so, pick it up and place the piece under it. Also be aware, it does not matter what level your worker is standing at when it tries to build. For example, this worker could build this level 3 piece up onto this tower. However, you cannot build across a bridge. So a worker here could not build into this space. Let's go back to this original example though, where my worker built this level 1 piece from the stockpile and put it here, moving the token that was there to the top. Now let's also examine this god that player has. As I mentioned earlier, each god has a special power in the area here. Only the player with the god in front of them can use its power. And if you have 2 different gods, you can even use both of their powers on the same turn if they would apply. The first part of a power tells you when you can use it. In this case, after you build. I just built, so now I can use this power's effect, which tells me I may build an additional time as long as it's in the same space I just built in. That space already has a level 1 piece, so now I would need a level 2 piece to place on top of it. But there isn't one in our stockpile. However, this god has one, and remember, you can always build using pieces either from the stockpile or any player's gods. So I could move this one here, putting the token on top. Now remember, gods have a quest at the bottom, and this one says that if we clear this god while using its power, we've completed the quest. Clearing a god means using any of the pieces that were originally on it, and we just did as a part of resolving this god's power, so we've finished the quest. This will give us a reward later in our turn, so we'll come back and discuss the reward at that time. Just be aware, you do not have to fulfill the quest. Using powers and fulfilling quests is always optional. I could have just built one piece with my move and build action and not used this power. Or I could have used this piece as part of my first build of the action, which would not have fulfilled this quest, and that's okay too. Usually, you'll want to use the pieces on a god to fulfill their quest, but you do not have to. Also, when performing the move then build action, you must move, and then you must build. If you cannot do either, you cannot take this action. Before moving on, there is one other situation that may occur after you move and build. If a token is on a tower that has the exact number of levels it shows, collect that coin. Here we needed a level 1 and 2 tower, and that's what we see, so we take this token and then move it to any objective slot matching its color. If a coin shows a tower with a dome, then as soon as you place a dome on its 3rd level, you've completed that coin's objective and move it to a matching colored coin slot. Coins can also provide you with rewards later in your turn, as we'll see. Now though, let's discuss the other type of action you might instead resolve on your turn, playing the Sphinx's game. Here you pick up the die and roll it. The values are only used in later riddles, so you'll learn about their uses when the time comes, but for now just look at the color. If it matches the color of one of these gem tokens, take any tower piece or dome from the box and add it to the stockpile, and then discard the related token. If you ever roll the die and the matching gem token is already gone, then you failed the Sphinx's game and must destroy a worker of any color. It does not have to be your own, just ensure the players agree on which one it will be. When a worker is destroyed, you move it to this slot. And if a second worker would ever be destroyed, it goes here, and then your attempt at the current riddle immediately ends. We'll talk about ending riddles later, but with that we've covered the 3 actions available on your turn, which are summarized on your player aid. Remember, you can only pick one of the 3 actions to perform. And after, you move to the resolve reward step of your turn. If you have gained any rewards, you'll take them now in any order you like. If you have a god that was cleared, put it into this discard pile. If it was cleared and you finished its quest, also gain its quest reward. You can only gain the benefit of completing a god's quest if you controlled that god and you fulfilled its quest requirements. This reward shows the symbol for any 1 tower piece or dome. So we take any one of those pieces from the box and add it to the shared stockpile. If you fully completed an objective during your turn, also resolve any reward it provides. For this silver objective, you need to have filled each one of these spaces with silver coin tokens. And let's assume that during my turn, I filled in the last space here. Its reward says that we then choose 1 discarded god and place it on top of the god deck. So if we had previously cleared any gods, we would go through this discard pile and pick any one of them to put back on top of the deck. Not all of the objectives will provide you with rewards when you fulfill their objectives, but we'll learn about the benefits of fulfilling these later. I do want to point out, for this particular godlike objective, as it says here, to fulfill its requirements, you must set up using the expert difficulty, as we learned about earlier, as well as achieve this heroic objective, ignore the reward when you complete this silver objective, and collect every one of these blessing tokens. Speaking of which, blessings are another type of reward you can gain, so let's learn about those. For each blessing token under a worker, discard the token and move a blessing from the top of this deck over to the top of the god deck without looking at it. In the future, when a player takes a card from this queue, a blessing might fill its space. Blessings will stay in the queue until a player chooses to use it by resolving either its top or bottom half. Doing this does not use up your action for the turn. It can be resolved before or after whatever action you decide to perform. And if there's more than 1 blessing in the queue, you could resolve more than 1 blessing during your turn. As an example, you could use this top power before performing a move then build action in order to skip either the move or build part of the action. Or instead, after a play Sphinx game action, you could use this bottom power to re-roll the result one time. No matter which benefit you resolve, discard the blessing after, and then fill the empty space with the next card on the deck. We're not going to go over each of the blessings or gods in this video, as how they work is printed on them. But you can also refer to this glossary and icon legend in the rulebook if you have questions while playing. I should mention, when building in a space with a blessing, it is moved to the top of the newly placed piece, just like coins. However, if a tower with a blessing has a dome placed on top of it, the blessing token is discarded and no blessing card is gained. All right, that covers all the rewards, and I'll remind you a summary of the resolve reward step of your turn is here on the player aid. Once that is over, apply any end-of-turn riddle effects. The riddle we've been using does not have any, but riddle number 6 does in the area here, and you would just read and resolve those instructions now. Once a player's turn is complete, the next player in clockwise order takes their turn following the same steps. And turns will continue like this around and around the table until the riddle ends. This can happen if the objective that ends the riddle is completed. If it's one that requires coins, that happens once each of its slots has a coin. So for this riddle, when every gold coin is here. Remember, during the resolve reward step of your turn, you can resolve rewards you are owed in any order. So if the objective that ends the riddle is complete, you could resolve that first and end the riddle right away, or resolve other rewards you are owed first and then resolve this and end the riddle. The riddle also ends as soon as 2 workers have been destroyed. No matter how the riddle ends, you have the opportunity to gain achievements. So let's learn about that. If you're starting Riddle of the Sphinx for the first time, turn to the first adventure map in the rulebook, which looks like this. There are extra copies of this in the rulebook, and more can be printed from the publisher's website, so you can play this game's campaign as many times as you like. First, have every person who played the riddle sign their name in the guestbook area here. Different players can participate in different riddles, so new players can add their names over time. The adventure map is made up of 6 different labeled islands, and each has a set of riddles for you to solve. You are meant to solve riddles within an island in order, but can play the islands themselves in any order. So you really can start the game on any of them, but since Paradise Isles reinforces the rules of the game as you play, it's suggested that you start there. The page number you turn to begin a riddle is listed here. And each listing will also show how many possible objectives the riddle will offer, indicated by these symbols, which, other than the tutorial, will always be 4 possible objectives. Let's pretend for a moment we had just finished the tutorial riddle. This only has 2 objectives, and we'll assume that we have both of these objectives completed. Notice that each of these have a unique symbol. We then shade those related symbols in on its related line of the adventure book. Anytime you finish a riddle and shade in the objective symbols you completed, come to this constellation tree and shade in that same number of these diamond shapes anywhere you like. They do not have to be next to each other. You really can fill any of them in that you want, but we'll see why you might choose certain choices over others in a moment. Do not shade in these arrows with your completed objectives, only these diamond shapes. Coming back to our island, let's say that after completing these 2 objectives, we shaded these 2 diamonds. Diamonds create paths from one god to another. If you can trace filled-in paths from one god to another all the way back to what is known as the center Polaris, you've made those related gods friendly. For example, Hermes has a fully shaded path back to the Polaris, so Hermes is friendly. We cannot trace a path from Siren back to Polaris that is fully shaded. See, there's an empty diamond here, so the Siren is not friendly yet. When a god does become friendly, shade in this check mark, and we'll see how friendly gods are used a little later. Let's assume we later played Riddle 1 and completed these 3 objectives. We might use those to shade these 3 diamonds. Siren now has shaded paths that lead through other gods and paths back to the Polaris, so it's friendly now. These other 2 gods are connected to each other, but do not have shaded paths that lead back to the Polaris, so they are not friendly yet. You can replay a riddle, and if you do and complete objectives you had not shaded previously, you fill those in and that number of diamonds on the constellation tree. So here we would fill in 1 more diamond. When replaying a riddle, if you complete any of the previous objectives you had finished before, that's okay, but do not shade in extra diamonds for them, as you already gained those rewards. Starting with this 3rd riddle, you'll be asked to use both friendly gods along with the base gods when setting up your deck. You'll be told to form a god deck with 6 random face-down base gods, filling a single queue slot with 1 of them. Then we fill the other 2 slots with friendly gods chosen from the constellation tree. If this was our constellation tree at this point, we have all 4 of these friendly gods to choose from. Maybe we'll pick these 2. Each god has a unique number matching the number on their card, which you'll find in the area here. So just go through the friendly god deck, which has this back, and find the gods that you chose. You then add them to the slots as the setup required. Some riddles also instruct you to shade in arrows. In this case, 1 by each of the friendly gods we just chose to use in this riddle. So by each of those gods we chose, we shade in any 1 arrow that's pointing directly at them. So I might pick this arrow for this friendly god, and for Hermes, maybe I'll choose this one. If all the arrows pointing at a god were already filled in, then for those gods you wouldn't fill anything extra in. If you replay a riddle that would allow you to fill in arrows, and you choose different friendly gods to use, you do shade in their related arrows if they are currently empty. If you replay a riddle and choose the same god again, you would fill in another of its arrows if one of them is still empty. Shading all the arrows around a god affects your blessing deck. So let's see how that works. Starting with riddle number 2, we are told to make a blessing deck. We do this by shuffling together the blessings numbered 1 through 8, which is based on our current blessing score found in the bottom right-hand corner of our constellation tree page. This begins at 8 and is based on our starting Polaris value of 8. So again, a score of 8 means we use blessings 1 to 8. Anytime you shade in all of the arrows around one of these +1 value stars, you then increase your blessing score by that amount. So we would now fill in this circle, and when making the blessing deck in the future, we include cards 1 through 9. Now remember, you can replay a riddle as often as you like to try to complete its unshaded objectives. Or if you shaded at least 1 objective for a riddle, you can advance to the next riddle in the listed order. And let's say we gained these objectives as we continued. Once you've completed at least 1 objective on every riddle within an island, you can advance to any other island and work on its riddles. Well, except for this one. As it says in the area here, you must have shaded at least 1 objective on each other riddle before you can come here, where you will end up confronting the Sphinx. Completing the riddles on that last island and trying to defeat the Sphinx is the game's ultimate objective. Then you can turn to a fresh page in the adventure book and play through the riddles again. Now, as you play, new riddles will introduce new rules, but I'll leave those for you to discover on your own. And if you have questions while playing, you'll find a link to the game's online frequently asked questions document in the description of this video. Now though, let's discuss how the game changes at different player counts. With 3 players, each person gets one of the uniquely colored workers from the base set that they can use and decide where to place on the map. The players then together place this 1 shared red wanderer that comes from the Riddle of the Sphinx box. During your turn, you can select either your own personal worker or use the red worker to move and build with. Just note, the red wanderer is not allowed to be the first worker moved on 2 separate consecutive turns. But it is possible that it could perform multiple actions back to back because there are different god powers that can activate additional workers during a turn. And any of those could also target the wanderer. If you have 4 players, use 2 different sets of 2 different colored workers, and each person will control a single worker. Players then sit around the table so that as turns proceed clockwise, any given color will activate every other turn. So white, blue, and so on. The normal 2 god limit still applies to each player, but keep in mind, your god powers and quests are still only available to you and are not shared by your partner who has the same colored worker. If you're playing solo, use this included card, which will tell you how to set up and how to play, which uses the other side of this card and this wandering piece. But those rules I'll leave for you to discover on your own. Otherwise, that's everything you need to know to play Santorini, Riddle of the Sphinx. If you have any questions about anything you saw here, feel free to put them in the comments below and I'll gladly answer them as soon as I get a chance. You'll also find forums for discussion, pictures, other videos, and lots more over on the games page at Board Game Geek, and I'll put a link to that in the description below. And if you found this video helpful, please consider giving it a like, subscribing, and clicking that little bell icon so you get notification anytime we post a new video. And if you'd like to support me directly, you can join our Patreon team, which I'll have linked below. But until next time, thanks for watching.